And I'll be writing notes on a piece of paper, so don't mind me. Hello, 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 um, everyone, to Startup C. I see that we have one viewer, but as I understand that this is all going to be recorded and it will be exportable. It will, so I'll export it to YouTube, to our startup YouTube channel, and I can't wait to introduce you to our guest tonight is Kevin. I never pronounced your last name. I never said your last name. So can you say it so that I don't mispronounce it, Kevin? And could you introduce yourself,
Oh, thanks, David. And it's Sutantyo.
Sutantyo?
So it's phonetic, but I understand that when you see a string of letters that's not normal, you're like, it gets a little bit intimidating looking. So it's awesome to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I know that we've spent some time together out here in Jakarta, and so for me to be on, it's really an honor. So I'm Kevin, and I run the venture capital arm out here for Sovereigns Capital in Southeast Asia. We're an early stage investment firm looking to invest in high growth startups in the region, covering Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam. And actually, the thing that makes us unique as a venture fund is our thesis, which is faith driven. If you go to our website, we're very open about that. And we're looking to invest on the principles of what we're for versus what we're against. And
Mhm.
one of them truly is excellence in the marketplace. And so we're looking to invest in high growth startups run by founders with faith aligned values, similar to Grab out here, which is, I think, for the US audience, it's the Southeast Asia version of Uber and Lyft, although they have more of a super app feature. We also are an investor in Zendit, which is the Southeast Asia equivalent of Stripe in this region. So we believe that we're investing for market rate of returns and better, uh, uh, not in spite of our values, but because of our values. So it's been a great experience operating out here for the last 10 years in venture capital. And I look forward to a lot more to come.
Um, how did you get into venture, Kevin? This is a question that a lot of people ask on other shows because a lot of people are interested in getting into the VC world. But your journey is probably unique. Care to share, like, how exactly did you break in?
Yeah, so for me, I believe it was just the right place at the right time. So 2012 was when Sovereign's Capital started to raise for their fund. And in 2013, Luke Rausch lived in Jakarta for about 3 years. We met at church, and that when I found out about the thesis, I was very skeptical. But what really changed me was being an advisor to them because I had some angel investment experience both in the Valley and in Indonesia, and I had some operator experience. I was running a company for about 3 years that didn't do very well, just to be upfront. And I was also in the stock market in Indonesia.
Mhm.
So when I met Luke, it seemed to be I had some skill sets that could help be an advisor to them. This was very early in the Southeast Asia venture capital tech startup scene. And so I walked alongside Luke and the team in Indonesia as an advisor. And then when Luke looked to move back to the Valley in 2015, 2016, when I started to really step up my role. And eventually started to just manage the operations out here, looking, for existing portfolio and to look for new. I would say that um, for anyone looking to break into the scene,
Yeah.
it's yes, you can you can just go straight into venture capital. But one of the things that I think that is a route that a lot of people don't take enough is to jump into a startup first,
Mm,
and that when you get operational experience, it actually makes you a better investor. One of the things that we like to say is that we have empathy, and because we've done it, when we're on the other side, we can just truly understand what the founders, what the team is going through, versus just knowing it in theory.
awesome. Can I just ask, what did Luke see in what you could provide at that time to even put you on an advisory committee? I mean, I, yeah.
So I think that, and especially in 2012, it was like I mentioned, it was really early out here, and so the whole concept
Mhm,
of high growth companies that were, prioritizing this growth over profitability, it wasn't common. I think certain companies out here have done it, but for the most part, people were looking at or just organically growth business. And even when it came to technology, so for someone to just understand that simple concept off the bat,
mhm,
with me investing in the valley into certain companies, as well as in Indonesia, I think that I had that mindset. And secondly, it's just knowledge of the ground, where it's yeah, I think that you can be an excellent investor, so investing across different regions, just backing founders, going alongside people that you know and trust. But I think just me having a good understanding of the cultural context of just seeing, like, just having a feel of what would work or what would not work on the ground in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, more specifically. I
mhm.
think that was very helpful for Sovereign's Capital and for Luke in the early days.
Great. You and I are both basketball like fans. There's this podcast.
Laker fans specifically.
I never said I was a Lakers fan, but there's a basketball podcast in particular. It's called Knuckleheads. It's by Darius Miles and I forget Q Richardson, and they start their podcast with former NBA players, obviously, and they ask them, "What was your welcome to the NBA moment?" They use other kind of language, but same thing. Like, what was your what was your welcome to the venture capital world moment for you when you realize I'm in this world now?
I think that's a great question, and I would say when it sort of became real was when you started to uh, when I first kind of came onto Sovereigns first as more of like a venture partner role, and then I really started to have the opportunity to work directly with certain founders.
Mhm.
And to me, that just made it like, okay, wow, we're really doing this, and I get the pleasure and the honor of of working alongside just founders who have just amazing ideas, want to have scalable businesses, and want to, put their talents, to work, for, not just kingdom purposes, but for, to make this highly, impactful, profitable, scalable company out in this region. So yeah, I think it's just like, from just even just like whether it was just like entering a boardroom, or just, a first meetup with the first few founders, I it made it clear that, like, this is a responsibility, not to take lightly, right? That we're
Yeah,
not just throwing in capital and then just, see you in a month or see you in a quarter. We're really, really a part of what they're building.
that's awesome. This is from Nick Kim, who I know has his own AI consulting services. How is the startup scene different in Indonesia compared to Silicon Valley? Pros and cons.
Mm. I think so. One context to understand is like right now, right on, March 20th out here, it's
Mhm.
that we're still in a bit of a lull. in regards to in the startup, the VC ecosystem. And I do believe that these come in cycles. And currently, we're just in the lower point, probably not at the bottom of the cycle.
Hmm.
So, keep that in mind, as we continue on this chat. But I would say what's most different is that I think a lot of when we say problems,
Hmm.
right? A lot of opportunities, in the US, I think have been solved for the most part. And so the US has brilliant people working on, yes, things that, you know, for the future, right? And you can see that, wow, it's been like the metaverse, blockchain,
Hmm.
and, now AI. I would say that, fundamental problems still are out here in Southeast Asia, but that just
Mm.
means that there's amazing opportunities. So, there's still a lot of the population here that is just, not on an e-wallet, doesn't have a credit card. So there's still an opportunity in payments. There's a lot of businesses that are just not digitized, right? And so there's an opportunity for cloud. There's an
Mm.
opportunity for, um, just SaaS, and so it's been something where, if you can find, uh, where technology can really help businesses out here, and it looks different, right? It's not it's very, you can't just, you know put it out there, then all of a sudden people sign up on their own. There needs to be some market education, there needs to be some
Mm.
customer success. The problems, which are opportunities, that are just seem very basic for people in, a first world nation, still exist out here in the developing world.
Great, great. That's keen insight into what's important right now in the startup ecosystem in Indonesia. I have so many questions about the Indonesia startup system ecosystem. So let me just try to get through some of these, and then Julie, I know you're on the call. I mean, I know you're watching, so we'll definitely get to your question. If you have any others, feel free to just put them in. All right, let's mark that as answered. Um, Indonesia. This is Roshan, actually, my partner, my co-host. Roshan, for the record, Say Wise does not allow for two hosts at a time as of yet. So that's part of the reason why he can't be on this call. Indonesia is a vibrant startup ecosystem in Southeast Asia, but also a graveyard for many failed startups. What are common blind spots for startups? Meaning, what are some things that people don't account for when they begin their venture backed business out there, or their startup out here?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And I would say too, right, that, like, when you are looking at this venture capital type model with startups, it's when you say, Indonesia and Southeast Asia is a graveyard for failed startups, I actually think that's worldwide, right? It's just like, even out in the US, it's
Mhm.
what is it, one out of two startups that actually make it. So I
Mhm.
don't think that's something that is solely for Southeast Asia. But at the same time, what are the common mistakes out here, since it is early days, is, I think, lack of understanding of the startups, of the way that the venture capital model works. Like, I was at a great startup event this last weekend,
Mhm.
and a lot of the founders there were building some really great companies, but they didn't really understand until we told them that, venture capital has a fun life, and that, within this fun life, we're looking to deploy capital, work together for a period of time, and then we need to get into harvest mode. And so that really was eye opening for a few founders, that, like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, yeah, like, it's not like, we're here for a season together. That should be a high growth season. It's but I think that it's not something that, um, in I think, in the developed markets, that it's already assumed. But out here, I think that there's some education to be involved.
How do you tackle that part then? How do you educate founders and the startup ecosystems out there? I mean, the startup ecosystem out there. Do you do like workshops, conferences? Like, how do you educate?
Yeah, all of the above. It's
Wow.
because I would say that for the most part, founders get very very focused on building their company, building their product, solving problems. It's if they're not kind of well versed, in the ecosystem,
Hmm.
then they're just not they just no one has ever told them that. And sometimes they just don't know where to look for, certain information. It's only until they start to meet venture capital or angel investors that like, okay, the conversation starts to come up. And I think that in the early days, there's been situations where founders then said, okay, wonderful, let's take money, and then only to realize like 2 years later that, well, there's a fun life to it.
Wow. That can't be a fun conversation to have at that late at that stage of a company's life. Ju- Thank you. Julie asks, what were and are the key human capital challenges, I assume, in Indonesia? But if you could speak to the broader Southeast Asia market, that would be awesome too.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to the broader Southeast Asia market, one thing to really understand, right, is that it's not just this cohesive area, right? It is, in some ways, it's similar to the EU, right? Where you have different cultures, different languages, but we don't have like a euro sort of one currency to kind of help facilitate a lot of things. And so when we talk about Southeast Asia as a bloc or ASEAN, it's the way that they like to describe it is that it's more of like a geographical, you know, fraternal bond that the countries have, that they all have the same goal of moving forward and working together harmoniously. But then when it comes to protocols and when it comes to policies, not it's not all of it are there.
Hmm.
In the same way that the EU has for as a comparison, key human capital challenges. And so, therefore, that's very different across each region or
Hmm.
each country that
Each
you're
country,
looking
yeah.
into. So, Singapore has been wonderful, and people use Singapore as, sort of as a launching point,
Hmm.
right? It's like, I think Singapore is like, if you want a wonderful entry, into Southeast Asia, Singapore is a great place for someone from, the developing country to start. When you get there, it's everything works,
Yeah.
right? It's like, wow,
Yeah.
trains are on time, like, you can pay with your credit card everywhere.
Yeah.
And the challenge there is that it's a small ecosystem. I think it's an island nation of like maybe 6 million people. So it's a great place to start, but you need to, if you want to actually scale, like you just have to look outside.
Mm.
I think, for Indonesia, it's key human challenges is that despite our very very large population and large market, sometimes you have to really look at like addressable markets, right? And so we're a developing nation, young population that just continues to grow every year, but outside of like certain urban areas, it's we're I think in general, talent is just concentrated there. I
Mm.
would say that it's there's a scarcity of of talent, in especially who are versed in the technology ecosystem, and whether that's developers or people that know how to sell, support, and software products. I think that there's still a scarcity of talent for that, but it's growing.
Great. Um, this is my question. By the way, we have a few more to get to because 9:30 is a hard cutoff. I want to be respectful of your time, Kevin. What sectors, I'm going to add to this right now. What sectors have the most untapped potential for startups in the region? One, but actually, I want to kind of edit the question a little bit and say, if you were back on the other side of the table as an operator, founder, what what industry excites you the most specifically as it relates to Indonesia, as it relates to you launching a startup, if you were to? So it's a two-part question, most untapped potential, and for you, where would you kind of be on the other side of the table if you were to do this again? Not as an investor, but as a founder yourself in Indonesia.
I think I still go back to that. It may seem kind of like, oh, isn't that over and done with? But I still think that fintech is still has a
Mm,
tons of opportunities here, and that while there's been amazing companies already built in the space, and for people have already leapfrogged to sort of like to having AI, to having blockchain. And I think you can see that in maybe in certain cities in other countries. I think for the most part, like financial literacy, is still something that needs to be implemented here in Indonesia. And
mhm,
that it's a in terms of digital payments, it's rising but still low. I still think that there's opportunities in that. It's like, so that just goes to show you that oh, okay, we're developed, but there's still a lot of gaps.
mhm.
um I think that we had a call for startups in regards to like the logistics space,
I
right?
saw that on
And
LinkedIn.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
Please
yeah.
engage.
Mhm.
And then same with
Healthcare,
healthcare
yep.
too. We do believe that like with this growing population that is advancing into the middle class, that there is a lot of opportunities that once people have like certain basic needs met, that they start to really really focus in on quality of life and what kind of healthcare services out there, and they will need affordable digital services, and we need services that can scale and reach a lot of people versus your standard clinic, which is absolutely needed as well.
Yep.
But we need to be able to serve this growing population that has these needs.
Got it. Excellent. So you would do fintech if it were you were back on as startup mode, as a startup
I
founder?
think so. Yeah, I
Mhm.
like I like I like fintech and health tech. I think that if I were to jump into something, it would be probably one of those two.
Great. Given your background in biotech too, as an operator in biotech, does that translate at all to health tech?
Not necessarily. Yeah, and when I want to define biotech, I don't want to make it seem like that, I was on anything cutting edge. We were
Mhm.
we were producing bacteria for environmental waste.
Okay.
For the degradation of products, sort of like wastes, as well as fats, oils, greases, and stuff. So I wouldn't call it,
Got it.
I wouldn't call it a tech cutting edge biotech.
Got it. What? Okay, so let me go. So I see Sean is on the call too. Sean, I've noticed that I think you've asked this question before in a different, not the same one, but Sean has an interest in hardware. But let me get to Julie's question first. What mental resilience do you think makes one thrive in this journey? And I'm going to assume it's a startup journey and the investor journey. So there's like two journeys. I just want to make that distinction. So if you could just speak to both. And Kevin, we got 6 minutes, so I'm gonna like blast through a
Mhm,
few
mhm.
more. But
Yep,
go ahead.
yep. Yeah, I really think that you have to be able to answer the why question very well, right? Of why are you doing this? And then that really shows your purpose, right? Because I think that if as a starter or as an investor, if you're doing this just to make a lot of money, then you're going to easily find out that you can make a lot of money in other fields. And so to have to answer the question of why, that I want to solve this big problem or I would want to and be a part of solving these big problems that will get will actually help with your perseverance. When perseverance by
Mm.
far is one of the best traits that a founder needs to have, because the startup journey is very, very difficult.
Excellent. Sean asks, I'm going to say that what do you look for in early stage seed consumer hardware companies? Do you invest in hardware, first of all? Secondly, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so I would say that unfortunately, no, we don't invest in hardware. It's you can't invest into just one or two hardware companies. You have to, I personally think you have to be focused on it, right? Because it's investors take a portfolio approach, and given um, yeah, that it's for a law, right? Of just a few companies are the ones that really make it, and then and unfortunately, there's a lot that just end up not having the ideal outcome. And so we can't just invest into one or two startups. We need to do it on a grander scale, and we just don't do that. That's just not
Mhm.
our expertise. And I would say that what do we look for? Actually, since we're an
Yeah.
early stage, company, a lot of times, we're looking for product market fit, or at least very early
Mhm.
product market fit. And but you're really, really looking to see, if this is the right type of partnership. And for
Mhm.
us, we're looking for faith-driven entrepreneurs that
Mhm.
really do believe in the thesis, and that faith-driven capital as an investor is beneficial to them, in regards to their values alignment, in regards to the way that they want to run their company, well,
Mhm.
with excellence first and foremost. But to also realize too that, like, wow, my faith and my values all align with wanting to make an excellent company culture, because we truly believe that when you treat your people well,
Mhm.
they will in turn treat your customers and other stakeholders well with excellence. And
Mhm.
that by far just leads to outperformance in the long run. And so we believe that, our faith values, like, this is just good business values, and and they seem very commonplace, but it doesn't. But then, unfortunately, it's not something that not every company starts to really think about. So we're
Mhm.
looking for those founders that see this. And
Two more questions. Okay. What Indonesian startup or what Indonesian startups have successfully scaled from what in your from your observation and from your kind of experience, and what can we learn from them? This is a great opportunity to educate some of our viewers about some of those, those big companies in Indonesia that have successfully launched and scaled. Care to share?
yeah, the best one to look at, right, would be Zendit, which is Xendit. Right? This
Moses.
is so
Mhm.
what they're the first company for Indonesia to get into Y Combinator. And the lessons that we can learn is that you know mission is important, the
Mm.
why is important, wanting to solve a problem is important, team is important, culture is important. And Moses says is that we need to be better than the competition. We need to be better than sort of like the what the, than the next option, because excellence is the best form of not just witness, right? But excellence is
Mhm.
the best way to really, really have your moat, that your product is just so good that it can't be ignored.
And you've
And
seen that in Zendit.
I've seen it. Yeah, Sovereign's Capital was very, very honored to be one of the first institutional investors into Zendit coming out of Y Combinator,
Mhm.
and we've seen the resilience because we've seen Zendit pivot like Zendit. came out of Y Combinator not the Zen that it is today. And it's because they really, really dug into the market and they saw what was working, what wasn't working, and that they were able to just to capture the right opportunities and let go of of the other ones that had been in their previous thesis.
That's fantastic. Actually, I would just want to follow up with this question and end with one more. The follow up to this question, Kevin, was like, why did Luke choose Indonesia out of all of the countries in the world, out of all of the regions that Sovereign's Capital could have set up another arm of their shop? Why Indonesia? Just I never asked you actually.
Yeah, great question. And I think 2012 is not early to start a venture fund. Obviously, the faith-driven thesis sets sovereign capital apart, and Henry uh, in the Bay and in the setup was, but they had the thesis, we need to be present in other growing market. And I think by 2012, China probably not being friendly to this thesis was a market that they decided that they weren't going to look into. India would have been great, but just not the right connections. And so when Luke came out here to Singapore, KL, where he lived for I think a good 3 to 6 months, and and
Correct.
Indonesia, it was the right time that Southeast Asia was rising and the region was friendly and accepting to the faith-driven investing thesis.
Awesome answer. This is the last question, and it's usually for students who, we Roshan and I, we work with students, and you've seen us in our educational mode. AI is coming. It's arguably already here. How should students prepare for an AI-driven world? And we'll end with this.
I think that's great. And number one, I think just don't be afraid of it, right? It's a tool for you to understand and to learn. And that, for students, like just imagine a few decades ago where when, people looked at a Google sort of blank screen, one single line, like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, do I just ask questions? I don't understand. And now everyone just is like, oh yeah, of course, they use Google for everything. And I
Hmm.
think AI is uh, in that kind of right now. And so it's really important just to not be afraid of it. Start to just use it, play around with it,
Hmm.
learn about it,
Hmm.
because you being able to harness this opportunity, this tool, I think it's going to give you a competitive advantage, to your peers.
Great. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time. See you guys in the next AMA. Bye.
Pleasure to be here.